I'm Abigail, 29 years old, and I've worked my way up from nothing to become the youngest department head at one of the most prestigious tech companies in the country. Growing up, my parents treated me like their personal servant while they focused on maintaining their perfect image. But life has a funny way of coming full circle. Recently, my worlds collided when my parents tried to impress someone without realizing who he actually was to me. Before I tell you how my parents' faces completely drained of color when they realized who I was, drop a like and let me know where you're watching this from. This story is about to get interesting. My childhood started out normal enough. We lived in a modest suburban home, and my parents seemed like typical middle-class folks trying to provide a good life for their family. Everything changed when I was 8 years old, and my father received a big promotion at his financial consulting firm. Suddenly, we moved to a larger house in an upscale neighborhood, and my parents became obsessed with social status and appearances. Around that same time, my younger brother Jackson was born. From the moment he arrived, it was clear he would be treated like royalty, while I was given the role of the household help. At first, the changes were subtle. My mother would ask me to help with simple chores, like setting the table or picking up toys. But by the time I was 10, I was responsible for cleaning the entire house, doing laundry, and even helping prepare meals. "Abigail, a young lady needs to learn how to maintain a proper home," my mother would say whenever I complained about the workload. "Besides, your father works very hard to give us this lifestyle. The least you can do is contribute." Meanwhile, Jackson never had to lift a finger. My parents doted on him, celebrating his every achievement, no matter how small. When he got an A on a spelling test, we'd go out for ice cream. When I made the honor roll 4 years in a row, it was met with a distracted, "That's nice, dear. Now have you finished cleaning the bathrooms?" My mother was particularly critical of my appearance and manners. She'd constantly point out flaws in how I dressed, spoke, or carried myself. "Stand up straight, Abigail. No one will take you seriously if you slouch." Or, "Your hair is so unruly today. What will people think?" The contrast between her treatment of me versus Jackson was stark. He could run around with dirty clothes and messy hair, and they'd laugh about how boys will be boys. But I was expected to be perfectly groomed and behaved at all times, even while scrubbing floors or doing yard work. My father was emotionally distant throughout my childhood. He was rarely home, and when he was, his attention was focused entirely on Jackson. He'd spend hours teaching my brother how to throw a baseball or build model airplanes, while I watched from the sidelines, invisible except when someone needed something done. I remember one particularly painful incident when I turned 12. For weeks, my parents had promised me a small birthday party. Nothing fancy, just a few friends over for cake and games. I was so excited to have something that was just for me. The night before my birthday, my father announced that his boss and several colleagues would be coming over for dinner the next evening. "But what about my party?" I asked, my voice small. "Abigail, this is important for your father's career," my mother scolded. "We'll celebrate your birthday another time." That another time never came. Instead, I spent my 12th birthday serving appetizers to my father's colleagues and washing dishes while they ate the gourmet meal my mother had catered. No one even mentioned it was my birthday, except for one of my father's co-workers, who overheard me telling my only friend, who had called to wish me happy birthday, that my party had been cancelled. "It's your birthday," the woman had asked, looking surprised. "Why, Richard, you didn't tell us we were interrupting a celebration." My father had laughed it off. "Abigail doesn't mind. Do you, sweetheart? She's such a helpful girl." I still remember the pride in his voice when he said those words. Not pride in me as his daughter, but pride in having raised someone who would sacrifice her own happiness without complaint. That was the day I realized I was valued not for who I was, but for what I could do for them. As I stood in the kitchen that night, hand-washing crystal glasses while tears silently rolled down my cheeks, something hardened inside me. I made a promise to myself that I would find a way out of this situation. I would build a life where I was valued for my mind and my heart, not just my ability to make others comfortable. The seeds of my determination were planted that day, waterbed by every dismissive comment and every inequity I witnessed between my treatment and my brothers. What my parents didn't realize was that in trying to mold me into their perfect little helper, they were actually forging the strength and resilience I would need to eventually break free. By the time I reached high school, my role in the family had been firmly established. I was expected to maintain perfect grades while also taking care of nearly all household duties. My daily routine was exhausting. I'd wake up at 5 in the morning to prepare breakfast for everyone, clean up the kitchen, then get ready for school. After school, while my friends were joining clubs or hanging out together, I'd rush home to start dinner preparations and tackle my list of chores before beginning hours of homework. Mom, the debate team coach, asked me to join. They meet on Thursdays after school. I said one day, hoping she might finally allow me to pursue something for myself. My mother barely looked up from her magazine. Absolutely not, Abigail. Thursdays are when you deep clean the living room and prepare for your father's Friday meetings. Extracurriculars are for students who don't have family responsibilities. I watched as Jackson was allowed to join every sports team and club that caught his interest. My parents rearranged their schedules to attend his games and performances. Meanwhile, I attended parent-teacher conferences alone because they were too busy to come hear about my academic achievements. When I turned 16, I hoped for the same treatment my friends received: a used car or at least driving lessons. Instead, my parents presented me with a new list of responsibilities. Now that you're older, you can take on more complex tasks, my father said, handing me a printed schedule that included paying household bills, scheduling their appointments, and managing their social calendar. But when will I have time for myself? I asked. Don't be selfish, Abigail, my mother replied. Family comes first. What they really meant was that their needs came first. Mine weren't even a consideration. My only refuge during those years was my computer science class and my teacher, Ms. Rodriguez. She noticed how I would stay late after school coding long after assignments were completed. You have a real talent for this, she told me one afternoon. Have you thought about studying computer science in college? I laughed bitterly. My parents expect me to attend community college while living at home. They need me to keep running the household. Ms. Rodriguez frowned. Abigail, you have extraordinary potential. You could get scholarships to top universities with your grades and skills. Don't let anyone limit your dreams, not even your parents. Her words stayed with me, planting a seed of possibility I hadn't allowed myself to consider before. With her guidance, I began secretly applying to colleges and for scholarships. I used the school computers for applications and had all correspondence sent to Ms. Rodriguez's classroom. When the acceptance letters started coming in, I could barely contain my excitement. The most prestigious was from Westlake University, offering me a full scholarship to their computer science program. Ms. Rodriguez hugged me tightly when we opened the letter together in her classroom after school. I'm so proud of you, Abigail. You did this all on your own. For weeks, I kept the acceptances secret, knowing what would happen when I finally told my parents. But as enrollment deadlines approached, I had no choice but to reveal my plans. I chose a Sunday evening when we were all at home. My father was watching TV while my mother reviewed social invitations at the dining table. I stood in front of them, hands trembling but voice steady. I've been accepted to Westlake University with a full scholarship. I'll be studying computer science starting this fall. The silence that followed was deafening. My father muted the television. My mother set down her pen. That's impossible, she finally said. You never applied to Westlake. I did. Ms. Rodriguez helped me. My father's face darkened. And who exactly is going to take over your responsibilities here? Your mother can't possibly manage everything herself? I'm sure you can figure it out, I replied, surprised by my own boldness. You managed before I was old enough to do everything. What followed was the most explosive argument we'd ever had. They cycled through every manipulation tactic in their arsenal, from guilt to threats to emotional blackmail. After everything we've done for you, my mother sobbed. This is how you repay us. We put a roof over your head, food on the table, my father shouted. And this is the thanks we get. You can forget about any financial support, my mother threatened. If you walk out that door, you're on your own. For the first time in my life, I stood my ground against them. I've been on my own for years, I said quietly. The only difference now will be geography. In the weeks that followed, I secretly prepared for my departure. I saved every dollar from the part-time job I had been working on weekends, which my parents thought was a volunteer position. I arranged for housing on campus. And on the day after my high school graduation, while my parents were attending one of their social functions, I packed everything I could fit into 2 suitcases and left. I didn't leave a note. There was nothing left to say. Adjusting to college life was both exhilarating and terrifying. For the first time in my life, I was truly free. No one was monitoring my every move or expecting me to serve them. But that freedom came with its own challenges. I had no financial safety net after my parents cut me off completely when they discovered I had actually gone through my with my plans to leave. During my first semester, I worked 3 jobs while maintaining a full course load. I served coffee at the campus cafe in the mornings, tutored other students in mathematics in the afternoons, and worked as a night desk attendant in my dormitory. Every hour not spent in class or working was devoted to studying. I was determined to prove to myself and to my parents that I could succeed on my own. Despite the exhaustion, I thrived academically. The computer science program was challenging, but for the first time in my life, my hard work was recognized and appreciated. My professors noticed my dedication and talents. By the end of my freshman year, I had earned a reputation as one of the most promising students in the program. What surprised me most about college wasn't the academic challenges, but the social connections. I had never been allowed to develop close friendships in high school because of my responsibilities at home. At Westlake, I slowly began to form relationships with classmates who seemed to value me for who I was, not what I could do for them. My roommate Zoe was the first person to point out how strangely I behaved around other people. "You don't have to clean up after everyone you know," she said one night after watching me tidy our common room for the 3rd time that day. "And you're allowed to say no when people ask for favors." Her words hit me hard. I hadn't realized how deeply ingrained my people-pleasing behaviors had become. With Zoe's encouragement, I started seeing a therapist at the university's counseling center. Dr. Patel helped me recognize the patterns of emotional neglect and exploitation that had characterized my childhood. "What your parents did was a form of abuse," she told me during one session. "They parentified you, forcing you to take on adult responsibilities while denying you the normal experiences of childhood." I resisted this characterization at first. "But they never hit me," I argued. "They provided for my basic needs." "Emotional neglect is still neglect," Dr. Patel explained gently. "Children need more than food and shelter. They need nurturing encouragement and the freedom to develop their own identities." Through therapy, I began to understand that my parents' treatment wasn't normal or acceptable. I learned to set boundaries and to recognize my own worth beyond what I could do for others. The journey wasn't easy, and there were many nights I cried myself to sleep mourning the childhood I never had and the parental love I still craved despite everything. During those years, my contact with my family was minimal. My parents made little effort to reconnect aside from occasional text messages asking if I was done with this rebellion yet. Jackson, who was entering his teenage years, sometimes reached out, but our conversations were awkward and superficial. I sensed that he had been told a version of events that cast me as the villain who had abandoned the family. As I progressed through college, my confidence and ambition grew. I applied for a highly competitive summer internship at Tech Vision, one of the leading technology companies in the country. The application process was grueling, involving multiple technical interviews and coding challenges. When I received the acceptance email, I screamed so loudly that Zoe thought I had been injured. The internship was transformative. I worked directly under senior developers who pushed me to expand my skills beyond what I thought possible. My work ethic, honed by years of managing my parents' household while maintaining perfect grades, impressed my supervisors. By the end of the summer, I had contributed to a major project and received an open invitation to return after graduation. When I graduated with highest honors, 3 years later, I had multiple job offers from prestigious tech companies. The decision to accept Tech Vision's offer wasn't just about the competitive salary or benefits package. It was about joining a company where I had already experienced being valued for my mind and my contributions. Ironically, it was only after I accepted the position at Tech Vision that my parents suddenly expressed interest in reconnecting. They had somehow heard about my new job, probably through mutual acquaintances, and reached out with congratulatory messages that made no mention of our estrangement. "We always knew you would do well," my mother texted, as if the past 4 years of silence had never happened. I didn't respond. I was starting a new chapter of my life, and I wasn't sure if they deserved to be part of it. My first years at Tech Vision were a whirlwind of challenges and opportunities. I threw myself into every project, often working late into the evening and through weekends. Not because anyone was forcing me to, but because for the first time I was doing work that truly excited and fulfilled me. Unlike my parents, my supervisors at Tech Vision recognized and appreciated my contributions. My first annual review included not just praise for my technical skills, but also recognition of my collaborative approach and innovative thinking. Reading those words, I felt a validation I had never experienced growing up. As I gained confidence in my professional abilities, I also began developing my own leadership style. When I was assigned my first small team to lead on a project, I made a conscious decision to be the kind of leader I had always wished my parents had been. I made sure every team member felt heard and valued. I recognized their contributions publicly and addressed concerns privately. Most importantly, I never treated anyone as if their only worth was in what they could do for me or the project. "You have a remarkable way with people," my director commented after observing one of our team meetings. "Everyone seems to give their best when working with you." "I know what it feels like to be invisible," I replied. "I never want anyone on my team to feel that way." My approach paid off. Our projects consistently delivered on time and exceeded expectations. By my third year at TechVision, I was promoted to project manager, the youngest in the company's history at just 26 years old. During these years, my communication with my parents remained minimal. Occasionally, they would text on holidays or my birthday, always with superficial messages that never acknowledged our past or the years of distance. I would respond politely, but briefly, protecting the boundaries I had worked so hard to establish. Jackson, now in college himself, reached out more frequently. Our conversations remained somewhat awkward, but I sensed he was trying to form his own understanding of family dynamics, separate from our parents' narrative. While my biological family remained distant, I was building a chosen family of friends and colleagues who truly cared about me. My apartment became the gathering place for holidays and celebrations. These occasions were filled with genuine laughter and warmth, so different from the performative social events my parents had forced me to serve at. My reputation in the industry was growing as well. I was invited to speak at conferences and contribute to industry publications. At one such conference, I presented a new approach to user interface design that caught the attention of Marcus Reynolds, TechVision's CEO. I hadn't expected him to attend my session, so when I saw him in the audience asking thoughtful questions, I was both terrified and exhilarated. Afterward, he approached me directly. "Your presentation was impressive, Abigail," he said, shaking my hand firmly. "I'd like to hear more about how we might implement this approach more broadly across our products." What followed was a series of meetings where Marcus took a direct interest in my ideas. He challenged my thinking, pushed me to refine my concepts, and ultimately became a mentor. When a new department focused on user experience innovation was created, Marcus personally selected me to lead it. "You're only 29, he acknowledged during the meeting, where he offered me the position. "Some will question whether you have enough experience for this role, but I've seen enough to know that you have the vision and the leadership skills we need. The rest you can learn." I accepted the position with a mixture of pride and disbelief. The little girl who had been treated as nothing more than free household help was now leading a department at one of the most innovative companies in the tech industry. The day after the announcement of my promotion, I received a text message from my mother that made my stomach clench. "Your father and I are so proud of what you've accomplished," she wrote. "We'd love to reconnect and celebrate your success. Perhaps you could come to dinner this weekend. It's been too long." After consulting with my therapist, I decided to accept the invitation. Dr. Patel suggested that seeing them now from a position of strength and success might help provide some closure. I texted back a brief acceptance setting clear boundaries about my availability. Little did I know that this dinner would be far from the intimate family reconciliation they had implied. Instead, it would become the stage for a confrontation that had been years in the making. I arrived at my parents' home that Saturday evening, feeling a strange mix of anxiety and confidence. The house looked exactly as I remembered, a showcase of perfect taste, without any real warmth. I rang the doorbell, a peculiar formality, given that I had once lived there, but it felt appropriate, considering how long it had been since I'd visited. My mother opened the door wearing an elegant dress and perfectly applied makeup. "Abigail, darling," she exclaimed, ear-kissing near my cheeks. "You look so professional." I noticed she didn't say I looked beautiful or that she had missed me. Professional was the highest compliment in her vocabulary, I supposed. As she led me into the house, I was shocked to see at least a dozen people in the living room, all dressed formally and holding champagne flutes. This wasn't the intimate family dinner I had been promised. It was a full-blown dinner party. "What is this?" I whispered to my mother. She smiled brightly, though it didn't reach her eyes. "Just a few friends who wanted to meet our successful daughter. Everyone's been so curious about you." I immediately recognized what was happening. My parents had been bragging about me to their social circle, probably taking credit for my accomplishments despite our years of estrangement. I was being used as a status symbol, just as I had been used as free labor in my childhood. My father approached, putting his arm around my shoulders in a show of fatherly affection that felt alien and unwelcome. "There she is," he announced proudly to the room, "the tech executive. For the next hour, I was paraded around like a prize horse introduced to couples whose names I immediately forgot. Each introduction followed the same pattern. This is our daughter, Abigail. She's a department head at Tech Vision, youngest in company history. The guests would murmur appropriate sounds of impression, then ask me questions about my work that revealed they knew nothing about technology. I answered politely but minimally, feeling increasingly uncomfortable with the charade. Then my mother took my elbow and steered me toward the kitchen. "Abigail, could you help me bring out some appetizers?" The caterer left them arranged on trays in the refrigerator. I felt myself slipping into old patterns, automatically moving to help before I caught myself. But rather than causing a scene, I decided to go along with it for now. In the kitchen, away from the guests, my mother dropped her smile. "Try to be more enthusiastic when people ask about your work," she instructed. "Mrs. Holloway's son is also in tech, and she was very impressed to hear about your position." "Is that why you invited me here?" I asked quietly. "To impress your friends." "Don't be dramatic," she replied, handing me a heavy tray. "We're proud of you, that's all. Now take this out to the dining room, please." As I carried the tray out, I overheard my father holding court in the living room, telling a story about my childhood. "We always knew Abigail would succeed," he was saying. "She showed such promise from a young age, and we supported her every step of the way. Encouraged her interest in computers, made sure she had the best education." I nearly dropped the tray in shock at his blatant rewriting of history. He had never once shown interest in my computer skills. In fact, he had complained constantly about the time I spent playing on that machine when I should have been doing chores. I set down the appetizers and retreated to a corner of the room, trying to process my feelings. Part of me wanted to call out my parents' lies publicly to tell these people the truth about how I had been treated. But another part, the child still seeking approval, hesitated. Would anyone even believe me? As I stood there debating what to do, the doorbell rang. My mother looked confused, apparently not expecting any additional guests. My father went to answer it, and I heard his voice rise in excitement. "Mr. Reynolds, what an unexpected pleasure. Please come in." My blood ran cold. It couldn't be. But as I turned toward the entry, I saw Marcus Reynolds, my CEO and mentor, stepping into my parents' house. He was dressed casually in jeans and a blazer, looking somewhat out of place among the formally attired guests. My father was practically fawning over him. "Everyone, this is Marcus Reynolds, CEO of Tech Vision. Marcus, these are some of our closest friends." I remained frozen in place, trying to understand what was happening. How did my father know Marcus? Why was he here? Marcus looked equally confused as he scanned the room, clearly not expecting a party. Then his eyes landed on me and his confusion deepened. "Abigail," he called out, walking toward me. "What are you doing here?" Before I could answer, my father inserted himself between us. "You know our daughter." Marcus looked from me to my father and back again. "Your daughter Abigail is your daughter." His tone conveyed complete surprise. My mother joined us, smiling her perfect hostess smile. "Yes, we're so proud of her accomplishments at your company. Though she's been so busy, we hardly see her these days." Marcus was staring at me now, clearly puzzled by the situation. "I had no idea you were Richard and Evelyn Taylor's daughter. Your last name is different in our system." "I use my middle name as my last name professionally," I explained quietly. I had started doing this in college, a small act of separation from my family. My father was looking between us with growing excitement. "So you work directly with Abigail?" Marcus laughed. "Work with her. Abigail is one of our most valuable department heads. The entire executive team knows her name." My parents' expressions began to shift confusion, replacing their social smiles. Marcus continued oblivious to the tension. "In fact, just last week in the executive meeting, I was telling everyone that she's the future of the company. Her innovation strategy has completely transformed our approach to product development." I watched as my parents' faces registered this information. They had clearly known I had a good position at Tech Vision, but they hadn't understood the extent of my success or my direct connection to the CEO. Then came the moment that made every second of discomfort worth it. Marcus glanced at the empty glass I was holding and the tray of appetizers I had just set down. "Abigail, what are you doing serving drinks? You should be the guest of honor here." He laughed and took the empty glass from my hand. "I should be serving you drinks. You're the boss everyone at headquarters is talking about." The expressions on my parents' faces were truly priceless. My father's mouth actually fell open while my mother's carefully composed smile froze in place. Around us, their friends looked on with interest, clearly sensing that something significant was happening. "I didn't realize you were coming tonight, Marcus," I said, finding my voice at last. He shook his head. It was a last-minute thing. Your father has been reaching out about a potential contract with his firm. I couldn't make our scheduled lunch meeting yesterday, so I offered to stop by briefly tonight instead. He looked around at the gathered guests. I didn't realize it would be a party. My father, recovering his composure, jumped in. Just a small gathering of friends. But now that you're here, please let me get you a drink. What would you like? As my father hurried off to the bar cart, Marcus turned to me with raised eyebrows. I'm confused. You never mentioned your father was trying to secure business with Tech Vision. I didn't know, I replied honestly. We're not exactly close. Marcus seemed to sense the undercurrents of tension. He lowered his voice. Is everything okay, Abigail? It's complicated, I replied. Very complicated. For the remainder of the evening, I watched as my parents' behavior toward me transformed. Suddenly, I wasn't being asked to help in the kitchen or serve drinks. Instead, they were constantly at my side, proudly introducing me to guests who had previously been told only the vaguest details about my work. Marcus, meanwhile, continued to innocently drop comments that revealed my true standing at the company. He mentioned projects I was leading, praised my innovative approaches, and even referenced a recent board meeting where my work had been specifically highlighted. With each revelation, my parents' expressions cycled between shock and hastily composed pride. They were desperately trying to maintain their narrative of being supportive parents who had always believed in me. But Marcus's comments were making that increasingly difficult. The guests, picking up on the strange dynamics, began asking more pointed questions about my career path and upbringing. Questions that forced my parents to either lie outright or acknowledge their ignorance about my professional life. By the time dessert was served, the atmosphere was thick with unspoken tensions. I maintained a polite facade, answering questions truthfully, but without deliberately exposing my parents' fabrications. I didn't need to. Marcus was doing that unintentionally, with every casual reference to my work and achievements. As guests began to leave, Marcus pulled me aside. I should be going too, but I wanted to check in. There's something off about tonight. The way your parents look at you, the surprise when I talked about your role. What's going on? I took a deep breath. The short version: they didn't support my education or career. I put myself through college against their wishes. Tonight is the first time I've been to their home in nearly a decade. Marcus's eyes widened. But they've been talking about you as if they've been deeply involved in your life and career. Exactly, I said quietly. That's what feels so wrong about tonight. He shook his head, looking troubled. I'm sorry, Abigail. I had no idea. If I'd known, I wouldn't have come. It's not your fault, I assured him. Actually, your presence made some things very clear that needed to be clarified. After Marcus and the other guests had departed, I found myself alone with my parents for the first time in years. The facade they had maintained all evening crumbled as soon as the door closed behind the last guest. The silence in the living room was deafening as my parents turned to face me. My father's expression had morphed from the gracious host to barely contained anger. My mother busied herself gathering empty glasses, her movements sharp and jerky. You could have warned us, my father finally said, his voice tight. I raised an eyebrow. Warned you about what exactly? That I'm successful, that my CEO respects me, or that I wouldn't play along with the fiction that you've been supportive parents. Don't take that tone with me, he snapped. You know very well what I mean. You deliberately let us be blindsided by your relationship with Marcus Reynolds. I had no idea you were trying to get business from Tech Vision, I replied calmly. We haven't exactly been keeping each other updated on our lives. My mother returned from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a small towel. Why didn't you tell us you were so important at that company? She asked, sounding genuinely perplexed. We thought you had a nice middle management position. I laughed without humour. Would it have made a difference? Would knowing I was important have changed how you treated me? Of course it would. My father interjected, his business instincts clearly kicking in. We would have been there to support you, to help guide your career. The way you supported and guided me through college? I asked pointedly. By cutting me off completely. My father's face flushed red. You were the one who abandoned this family. You left without even a note after everything we'd done for you. Everything you'd done for me, I repeated, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. You treated me like an unpaid servant. You cancelled my birthday party so I could serve hors d'oeuvres to your colleagues. You denied me any kind of normal childhood because you needed someone to manage your household while you cultivated your precious social image. My mother gasped. That's not true. We were preparing you for the real world, teaching you responsibility. Responsibility, I echoed incredulously. Is that what you call forcing a 12-year-old to manage your entire household while you lavished attention on her brother? Is that what you call denying me any extracurricular activities because chores came first? What about college? Was cutting me off financially when I wanted an education your way of teaching responsibility too? You were being rebellious and unreasonable, my father countered though, with less conviction now. We expected you to attend community college while living at home. It was a perfectly reasonable plan. Reasonable for whom? I demanded. For you, because you'd still have your maid and household manager. It certainly wasn't reasonable for me and my future. A tense silence fell over the room. My father paced a few steps, then stopped, his expression changing as a new thought seemed to occur to him. Well, what's done is done, he said, his tone suddenly conciliatory. The important thing is that you've done well for yourself. We're proud of you, really, we are. He moved closer, lowering his voice. And now that we know about your position at Tech Vision, perhaps you could put in a good word for my firm. Marcus seemed very interested in our services. And there it was, the real reason for their sudden interest in reconciliation. Not because they missed me or regretted their treatment of me, but because I could potentially be useful to them again, this time as a business connection. I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me. So that's what this dinner was really about. You heard about my promotion and thought you could use me to network. My father had the grace to look slightly embarrassed, but he pressed on. It would be a mutually beneficial arrangement. Your mother and I could attend company events with you, help you navigate the social aspects of executive life. And you could help introduce us to people like Marcus. My mother nodded eagerly. We could be a family again, supporting each other. I looked between them, truly seeing them clearly, perhaps for the first time. They hadn't changed at all. They still saw me as a means to an end, not as a daughter to love and cherish. I've been navigating executive life just fine without your help, I said quietly. I've built a career, relationships, and a life that I'm proud of, all on my own. But we're your parents, my mother insisted, her eyes filling with tears that I suspected were more strategic than genuine. We were just doing what we thought was best for you. Maybe we made mistakes, but we always loved you. Did you? I asked simply. Because love isn't treating someone as property. Love isn't assigning a child adult responsibilities while denying them opportunities. Love isn't cutting someone off because they want an education. And love certainly isn't reconnecting only when you think they can be useful to you. Dear Sushant, my father's conciliatory demeanour was rapidly evaporating. After everything we've done, this is how you speak to us. The ingratitude is astounding. I'm not ungrateful for the good things you provided, I clarified. You gave me food, shelter, education through high school, but you also took things from me, things every child deserves. You took my childhood, my sense of self-worth, my belief that I was lovable for who I was rather than what I could do. I took a deep breath, centering myself. Here's what I'm willing to offer. If you want a relationship with me, we do it on new terms. No more pretending the past didn't happen. No more using me as a networking opportunity. And we start with family therapy, all of us together, including Jackson. My mother looked appalled. Therapy. We don't need strangers prying into our private family matters. Those are my terms, I said firmly. Take them or leave them. My father's business instincts were clearly at war with his pride. And what about Tech Vision, my firm's proposal? I won't interfere either way, I stated clearly. If your proposal has merit, it will be considered on its own. I won't use my position to influence business decisions based on personal relationships. That's not how I operate. The disappointment on his face confirmed everything I needed to know about his priorities. I think it's time for me to go, I said, gathering my purse. You have my number. Let me know if you're interested in my terms for moving forward. As I walked to the door, my mother called after me. Abigail, please don't leave like this again. I turned back one last time. I'm not leaving like last time, Mom. Back then I was running away from something. Now I'm walking confidently toward the life I've built for myself. There's a world of difference. With that, I stepped out into the cool evening air, feeling both heartbroken and strangely liberated. The confrontation had been painful but necessary. I had finally spoken my truth, set my boundaries, and offered a path forward that honoured my worth. Whether they would take that path remained to be seen, but for the first time, that decision felt like theirs to make, rather than a reflection of my value. As I drove away from my childhood home, I realized I was finally free from the need for their approval or acceptance. I had found my own worth, built my own life, and that was enough. In the days following the dinner party confrontation, I found myself experiencing a complex mix of emotions. There was grief for the parental relationship I had never had and likely never would. There was anger that even now they saw me primarily as a means to an end. But surprisingly, there was also a sense of peace. I had spoken my truth, set my boundaries, and walked away with my dignity intact. At work the next week, Marcus stopped by my office, closing the door behind him. "I owe you an apology," he said without preamble. "I had no idea about your family situation. I feel like I made things worse by showing up unannounced." "Actually, you made things better," I assured him. "You helped expose some truths that needed to come to light." He sat down across from my desk, his expression serious. "You never talk about your family. I always assumed it was just privacy, but now I understand there's more to it." Briefly, I shared the outlines of my childhood and estrangement from my parents. I explained how they had treated me as a servant, rather than a daughter, and how I had put myself through college against their wishes. Marcus listened without interrupting, his face growing increasingly troubled. When I finished, he shook his head slowly. "I'm amazed by your resilience, Abigail. Many people would have been crushed by that kind of upbringing. Instead, you've become one of the most compassionate and effective leaders I know." His words meant more to me than he could possibly understand. Here was someone who saw my value not just in what I could do or produce, but in who I was as a person and a leader. "Thank you for trusting me with this," he continued. "I want you to know that I see your father's business proposal in a new light now. It's being evaluated strictly on its merits, without any personal considerations either way." "That's all I would expect," I assured him. After our conversation, Marcus became even more of a mentor to me. He shared his own experiences rising through the corporate world, offered guidance on navigating difficult leadership challenges, and became something of a father figure, though neither of us ever explicitly acknowledged this dynamic. Meanwhile, my professional success continued to grow. The department I led was producing innovative solutions that set new standards in the industry. Our team culture was frequently cited as a model for other departments. People wanted to work with us, not just because of the interesting projects, but because of how we worked together. About a month after the dinner party, I received a text message from Jackson. "Can we meet for coffee? There's something I need to talk to you about." We arranged to meet at a quiet cafe near my apartment. When Jackson arrived, I was struck by how adult he looked. No longer the little boy I remembered he was, now a college junior, studying business at our father's alma mater. After awkward small talk, he finally got to the point. "I heard about what happened at Mom and Dad's dinner party," he said. "Dad was furious about it for days, but it made me start questioning things about how they treated you versus me." I stayed silent, letting him continue. "I always knew you did more around the house, but I didn't realize." He trailed off, looking genuinely distressed. "I didn't understand that you were basically raising me while still a kid yourself. I'm sorry, Abigail. I should have seen it." His apology, simple and sincere, brought tears to my eyes. "You were just a child, Jackson. It wasn't your responsibility to recognize what was happening." "Maybe not then," he acknowledged. "But I'm an adult now, and I need to take responsibility for being complicit in how they treated you, even if it was just by accepting their narrative." We talked for hours that day, really talked for perhaps the first time. Jackson shared his own complicated feelings about our parents, their expectations, and the growing sense that their love was conditional on his achievement and compliance. That coffee meeting marked the beginning of a genuine relationship between us. We started meeting regularly, sometimes just to catch up, other times to process our shared but very different experiences of our family. Through Jackson, I learnt that our parents had not reached out about my conditions for reconciliation. They had told him I was being unreasonable and dwelling in the past. While my relationship with Jackson was healing, my professional life was flourishing. I was invited to join Tech Vision's executive leadership team, a promotion that came with increased responsibilities and visibility in the company. At the same time, my personal life was transforming too. At a tech conference in Seattle, I met David, a software architect, with a gentle manner and quiet confidence. Unlike previous men I'd dated, David didn't seem intimidated by my success or expect me to manage his emotional needs. Our relationship developed slowly and thoughtfully based on mutual respect and genuine affection. After 8 months of dating, David and I moved in together. Creating a home with him was a healing experience. We made decisions together, shared responsibilities equally, and most importantly, treated each other with consistent kindness and respect. "You know what I love it about us," David said one evening as we cooked dinner together. "We're a team. There's no scorekeeping, no power plays, just two people caring for each other." His observation made me realize how far I had come from the daughter desperately seeking approval through service. I had learned that love shouldn't feel like servitude, that true partnership meant mutual support and respect. About a year after the dinner party confrontation, I received a text message from my mother. "Your father and I have been thinking about what you said. We're willing to try family therapy on a trial basis." Their capitulation came, I suspected, as much from social pressure as genuine desire for reconciliation. Jackson had been increasingly vocal about his concerns regarding their treatment of me, and several of their friends, who had attended the fateful dinner party, had asked uncomfortable questions afterward. The first therapy session was tense and difficult. My parents attempted to minimize their actions, portraying themselves as strict but loving parents who had only wanted the best for me. The therapist, Dr. Wong, gently but firmly challenged this narrative, asking them to consider the impact of their actions rather than just their stated intentions. "Whether you meant to or not," Dr. Wong explained, "you created a family dynamic where one child was treated as a servant while the other was treated as a prince. The message Abigail received was that her worth was tied exclusively to what she could do for others, not who she was as a person." Over subsequent sessions, layers of family dysfunction were gradually peeled back. My parents' own upbringings were examined, revealing generational patterns of emotional neglect and conditional love. My father had grown up with a father who valued status and achievement above all else. My mother had been raised by parents who emphasized appearance and social standing over emotional connection. Understanding the roots of their behavior didn't excuse it, but it helped me develop compassion for the wounded children they had once been. They hadn't set out to harm me. They simply didn't know how to parent differently than they had been parented. Progress was slow and uneven. Sometimes my parents would seem to have breakthroughs, acknowledging the pain they had caused. Other times they would retreat into defensiveness and denial. But we continued showing up week after week, doing the hard work of healing. While navigating these complex family dynamics, I was also building my team at work based on principles of respect and recognition. I made sure everyone felt valued, not just for their output, but for their unique perspectives and contributions. Marcus noticed the exceptional culture we were creating. "What you've built here isn't just a high-performing team," he observed during a quarterly review. "It's a community where people thrive. We need to implement this approach across the company." This led to my involvement in a company-wide initiative to transform TechVision's culture, an opportunity to ensure that no one in our organization felt invisible or undervalued, as I had for so much of my childhood. Meanwhile, my relationship with David continued to deepen. His steady presence and unconditional support gave me the safety to continue working through my family trauma. When he proposed after 2 years together, it felt like the beginning of a new chapter, an opportunity to create the kind of family I had always longed for. "I can't promise we'll never make mistakes," he said on the evening he proposed, "but I can promise that you will always be seen, heard, and valued for exactly who you are, not what you can do for me or anyone else." The contrast between David's words and my childhood experiences couldn't have been starker. Here was someone offering love without conditions, partnership without exploitation. As I planned our wedding, I faced the difficult decision of whether to invite my parents. After discussing it with Dr. Wong and David, I decided to extend an invitation with clear boundaries. They could attend as guests, but they would not have special roles in the ceremony, and any disrespectful behavior would result in them being asked to leave. To my surprise, they accepted these terms and attended the wedding without incident. My father even approached me at the reception with what seemed like genuine remorse. "You've created a beautiful life, Abigail," he said quietly. "I wish I could take credit for it, but I know I can't. If anything, you succeeded despite us, not because of us." It wasn't a full apology, but it was perhaps the most honest thing he had ever said to me. I thanked him for coming and for his words, neither accepting nor rejecting the olive branch he was tentatively extending. As David and I settled into married life, I found myself reflecting on the long journey from the invisible girl serving at her parents' dinner parties to the woman I had become. The healing wasn't complete, and perhaps never would be entirely, but I had broken the cycle of toxic family dynamics and created a life filled with meaningful work, authentic relationships, and genuine love. The little girl who had once believed her only value lay in what she could do for others now understood that she was worthy of love simply for being herself. And that realization was perhaps the most profound transformation of all. Life doesn't always provide the neat resolutions we might wish for. My relationship with my parents remains complicated, a work in progress. But I've learned that we can heal and thrive even without perfect closure or Hollywood endings. Sometimes setting boundaries, speaking our truth, and building a life aligned with our values is victory enough. I look at my life now, the loving partnership I share with David, the fulfilling work I do, the genuine connections I've formed with friends and colleagues, and I know that I've created something beautiful from the broken pieces of my childhood. And in doing so, I've written my own definition of family, one based on mutual respect, genuine care, and unconditional acceptance. Have you ever had to redefine what family means to you? Share your experience in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that they too can break free from toxic patterns and create a life of authentic connection. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, your worth isn't determined by what you do for others, but by who you are at your core.